Well, school feeding schemes can and must continue. That's the word from education and children's rights groups. They've come together and wrote an open letter to Basic Education Minister Angie. The organizations say pupils must have access to proper nutrition. Joining me now via Skype is Equal Education's Leanne Jansen-Thomas, who speaks to us from Cape Town. Ms. Jansen-Thomas, thanks for your time. So you're calling for the school feeding schemes to reopen. Question is, how do you do it without putting children's lives at risk?
The safety of children in this issue is paramount. And the fact is that we can't have 9 million children go hungry while schools are closed. And so Equal Education, the Equal Education Law Centre, Section 27, the Centre for Children's Rights and the Children's Institute have written a letter to Minister Motshekga laying out various scenarios so that we ensure that children have access to meals and so that their immune system is also not compromised. So one of the scenarios that we propose is that schools are deemed essential services locations because they are familiar to communities, they are accessible to communities. And then what could happen is having staggered days and times for collection and cutting off collection at a particular point in the day. We appreciate the complexity and the difficulty of the task at hand, but we simply can't let children go hungry, millions of children go hungry at this time.
Leanne, the Western Cape Education Department has been doing this. In fact, it has been saying that it's responding to desperate calls from communities where these children come. The problem, though, is that there are those who are challenging it. But before we get to that, I want to ask you about whether or not you've been following the safety precautions when handing out these food parcels to children.
So as relates to the Western Cape specifically, there have been protocols put in and we provide food to children. And we have been following what has been happening in the Western Cape and also in Gauteng. Gauteng, through the Department of Social Development, has also been providing packages to learners' families via schools and via principals. And in the Western Cape specifically, it seems that the issue there is that there was a lack of consultation. And so what we're calling for is for the Department of Basic Education to lead us and to bring all the relevant stakeholders together to be able to work out how best can we ensure that children have access to these meals, but that we do so safely and do so carefully, obviously.
Yeah, well, you're saying that in the Western Cape, the problem appears to have been a lack of consultation. Well, one organization calling itself ICOSA is saying that no, this actually has to do with the safety precautions, that the MEC is being reckless. She's putting children's lives at risk of being infected by this virus, and they've actually taken this drastic step of taking her to court.
We're aware that there are various organizations that are unhappy with the decision that the Western Cape has taken to provide these meals. And we find ourselves in a very difficult position, obviously, and appreciate that we don't want to put children's lives at risk by trying to feed them. But if there are particular concerns with safety and with safety protocols, then those needs to be hashed out. Unfortunately, we are at the point now where all stakeholders need to come to the table to try and figure out what are the concerns and how can those best be resolved. Our fundamental point is that children cannot go hungry, and we need to devise safe ways to ensure that they can access these meals. And I think that is best done when we are in consultation with the authorities such as the Basic Education Department, in consultation with the Department of Social Development, and in consultation with communities themselves. No intervention is going to be foolproof, but we have to practice a politics that prioritizes children and figures how best can we protect children at this time.
So briefly, the organizations that are opposed to this, are you saying that they're actually politicizing what essentially is a potential humanitarian crisis?
We have to be careful of not politicizing this. And what I want to say is and emphasize is that we need to practice mature politics that brings everyone to the table. It's really easy with an issue such as this to go back and forth between organizations and to simply not see eye to eye and to simply cast stones. And obviously where people have legitimate concerns, those must be aired and those must be hashed out. But let's first all come together to one table and figure out how we can do best by children.
Briefly, how soon would you like the National Minister of Education to respond?
Immediately. We'd like her to call all stakeholders to the table this week. I'm sure you know, Polly, that for many learners, this one meal that they access at school is the only meal that they have access to for an entire day. And yes, we appreciate that this is a delicate situation, but we also need to think about if children aren't able to eat, that also compromises their immunity. One of the other calls that we've made to government alongside this call for the continuation of the National School Feeding Program is that there should actually be an increase in the child grant as well. We simply cannot continue this lockdown and say to people, stay home, when people don't have access to food, when people are hungry. How do you stay home when you are hungry?
Indeed, and that's exactly the critical question to answer for those in authority.